When I left home, I made a solemn promise to my family that it would only be for a year. I assured them that I'd return soon. However, as time passed, 1 year turned into 10, and I began to realize that my family might have given up hope of my ever coming back. During those years, we grew apart, but I remained committed to supporting them by sending half of my salary home each month. Despite the physical distance, we managed to stay connected through sporadic phone calls and messages. Usually, their responses were filled with excitement and gratitude when they received the money. However, there came a time when several months passed without hearing much from them. I received only the occasional thumbs-up emoji in response to my messages. This silence left me increasingly concerned, prompting me to make the decision to fly back home and surprise them. It was an overdue visit, and I felt it was time to reconnect. You see, I had been employed as a maid for an exceptionally wealthy family, and they had never allowed me to take a vacation during my entire tenure. So I decided to tell a little white lie and informed them that my father was unwell, and I had to rush back home to be with him. The truth was, I wasn't entirely sure if my father was actually sick, but I had to find out. I expected my employers to insist that I leave immediately, but to my surprise, they responded differently. They forbade me from leaving and threatened to terminate my employment if I dared to go. In the end, I was indeed fired, with just an hour to gather my belongings, bid farewell to the children I had cared for, and vacate the premises. I couldn't believe what had just happened. After all the sacrifices I had made for them, I felt both hurt and relieved to leave that household. I used the last of my savings to purchase a plane ticket, knowing that once I returned home, my parents would welcome me with open arms, just as I had cared for them over the years. As the taxi pulled up to my parents' address, a sense of unease settled over me. My father had always taken great pride in his garden, but the yard appeared to be in disarray. Panic coursed through my veins as I feared that something terrible might have occurred. Ignoring the chaotic state of the yard, I rushed to the front door and began knocking urgently. The darkness inside the house confirmed that no one was home. I made the impulsive decision to test the front door, hoping it might miraculously open, and to my astonishment, it did. Stepping inside, I was hit by an overwhelming stench that made it seem as though something had perished in there. Quickly, I covered my nose and moved swiftly through the house, checking the other 2 rooms, but they were empty. Suddenly, a shuffling sound reached my ears, causing my heart to skip a beat. There was hope. My parents were still here. Filled with excitement, I turned around and exclaimed, "Surprise! I'm home." However, instead of the warm faces of my parents, I found myself face to face with a massive, disheveled man who appeared just as shocked as I was. In sheer panic, I screamed and demanded to know what he was doing in my house. Without a word, the man bolted and began sprinting away. "I'm calling the police," I shouted after him, hoping to halt his escape. My threat did the trick, and he paused, retracing his steps up the path. With a chuckle, he remarked, "Nobody's lived here for a month, honey." I moved in when I saw the place was deserted. Finders keepers, right? I couldn't believe my ears. Where were my parents? Dread washed over me as I considered the possibilities. Had they abandoned me? My gaze fell upon a few envelopes on the table, bearing my handwriting, but strangely empty. The man noticed my curiosity and casually mentioned that someone had been sending money to the house, which he found rather generous. This couldn't be true, and I knew I had to contact the police immediately. My parents might be in grave danger, or worse, they could be gone forever. The man excused himself, claiming he needed to run an errand. For some reason, I decided to explore further, perhaps driven by paranoia from watching too many horror films. As I looked around, I couldn't help but notice the appalling condition of the place. Given my experience as a maid over the past decade, I immediately got to work cleaning the place since it was my natural inclination. Hours passed, and when the man returned, I confronted him, desperate for answers. He claimed he had never seen my parents and insisted the house had been empty when he moved in. I found his story hard to believe, and he seemed fearful as he reached for his phone to call the police. That's when I noticed something unusual. "Hey, that's my dad's phone," I exclaimed, a mixture of confusion and anger welling up inside me. The man seemed flustered and stammered, "Well, it was here when I moved in, so I sort of claimed it." I couldn't comprehend why he was responding to me. When I questioned him about the thumbs up emoji, he brushed it off as politeness. As a last-ditch effort, I attempted to call my mom's number, and to my surprise, I heard the phone ringing nearby. "Oh, I didn't think Samantha was here," the disheveled man remarked casually. He then rummaged through a sleeping bag and retrieved my mom's phone. Feeling defeated, I realized I had no choice but to contact the police. I didn't want to make the call in front of the man, so I told him I would be back after attempting to locate my parents and hastily left with my suitcase. Once outside, I immediately dialed the police and informed them of the situation. They'd assured me they would come over right away. In the meantime, I decided to seek information from the neighbors, hoping someone might remember me or provide details about my parents.